In most countries, this sport is called football. In Canada, it's called soccer. And for a very long time, that single word told you everything you needed to know about the place the sport occupied in Canadian culture. While Brazil produced Pelé, Ronaldo, and Neymar, Canada produced Gretzky, Crosby, and McDavid. While football became a religion across much of the world, Canada built its sporting identity around something else. Hockey. For generations, hockey wasn't just Canada's favorite sport. It was Canada. The biggest stars played hockey. The biggest moments belonged to hockey. The biggest dreams were built around hockey. Soccer existed. Millions of kids played it. Parents drove their children to training sessions every weekend. Fields across the country were full. But despite all that participation, soccer always seemed to live in the background. Popular. Growing. But never truly central to Canadian sports culture. And that's why what is happening in 2026 feels different. Because for the first time, soccer isn't simply being played in Canada. It's becoming part of Canada's identity. To understand why this World Cup matters so much, you have to understand where Canadian soccer came from. For most of modern football history, Canada wasn't part of the conversation. The men's national team qualified for the 1986 World Cup. Then they disappeared. For 36 years, Canada failed to qualify for another World Cup. An entire generation grew up without seeing their country on football's biggest stage. While Brazil won World Cups. While Germany built dynasties. While Argentina created legends. Canada watched from the sidelines. Then something changed. A new generation arrived. Players started appearing in top European leagues. Youth participation continued growing. Investment increased. Infrastructure improved. And quietly, year after year, soccer kept gaining ground. Today, nearly 1 million players are registered across Canada. It's one of the most played sports among young Canadians. But growth alone doesn't change a country's culture. Moments do. And in 2026, Canada received the biggest moment imaginable. The World Cup. For the first time in history, Canada wasn't just participating in football's biggest tournament. It was helping host it. Suddenly, soccer wasn't competing for attention. Soccer became the attention. Cities like Toronto and Vancouver prepared for the world. Stadiums filled. Fan festivals appeared everywhere. Bars packed with supporters. People who had never cared about group standings suddenly cared about every result. And then came the matches. Canada opened the tournament with a draw against Bosnia and Herzegovina. Not a perfect start. Not a historic one. But enough to keep the dream alive. Then came Qatar. 6 goals. 0 conceded. A 6-0 victory. The biggest World Cup win in Canadian history. And something happened after that game. People started paying attention. Not just football fans. Everyone. Ticket demand surged. Media coverage exploded. The national team became a topic of conversation. For the first time, many Canadians weren't watching because the World Cup was in Canada. They were watching because they cared. And perhaps that's the most important part of this story. Because this isn't really a story about results. It's a story about belief. For years, leaders within Canadian soccer have talked about this tournament as a once-in-a-generation opportunity. Not because Canada would necessarily win the World Cup. But because the World Cup could change how Canadians see the sport forever. Because every football nation begins the same way. Someone starts believing. Then a family believes. Then a city believes. Then eventually, an entire country believes. And maybe that's exactly what we're witnessing. Canada has always been one of the most multicultural countries on earth. Millions of Canadians grew up in households connected to football nations. Portugal, Italy, England, Croatia, Iran, Brazil. For decades, football belonged to their parents, their grandparents, their heritage. But not necessarily to Canada itself. This World Cup feels different. For the first time, soccer isn't just something Canadians inherited from somewhere else. It's becoming something uniquely Canadian. Maybe Canada won't win this World Cup. Maybe it won't even come close. But some World Cups aren't remembered because of who lifted the trophy. Some are remembered because of the countries they transformed. Years from now, when people look back at the history of soccer in Canada, they may point to the summer of 2026. Not as the year Canada won the World Cup, but as the year Canada finally fell in love with the world's game. Because in most countries, this sport is called football. In Canada, it's called soccer. But after 2026, that difference may not matter nearly as much as it once did. Because for the first time, millions of Canadians aren't just watching the world's game. They're making it their own.